The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
All right, let's get everybody caught up on the latest with NSA whistleblower, leaker, patriot, traitor, Edward Snowden. That kind of characterizes the different ways he's being described by many.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhere in one of those. He did another interview with the South China Morning Post, and in it, he is doing that I think is something that's bordering on pretty dangerous territory, where he actually said the U.S. government has been hacking Hong Kong and China for years. Now, on our bonus show, Lewis, you often will talk about China hacking the U.S. We've talked about the weapons schematics that they have hacked into and all of that other stuff. And now Edward Snowden is saying, hey, the U.S. has been hacking China and Hong Kong for a while. He carried this interview out from some secret location in the city, and one of the conditions of the interview was that the write-up in the South China Morning Post not say how they actually carried out the interview. And he said that the government has been hacking into computers in Hong Kong and in mainland China for years. This was about an hour-long interview, and he said that according to unverified documents seen by the Post. He showed documents to the South China Morning Post, but they were not documents that the Post could independently verify, that the NSA has been hacking into computers in Hong Kong and in China since 2009. None of the documents that he showed to the South China Morning Post revealed any information about Chinese military systems, according to what he said. The U.S. also, he says, is exerting bullying diplomatic pressure on Hong Kong to extradite him. He also says that Hong Kong's rule of law will protect him from the U.S., and he says he is in constant fear for his own safety and that of his family. And he says, people who think I made a mistake in picking Hong Kong as a location misunderstand my intentions. I am not here to hide from justice. I am here to reveal criminality. He kind of is hiding from justice in the sense that if he were in the U.S., as opposed to having made the decision specifically to avoid prosecution in the U.S. to go to Hong Kong, he would be facing a different justice than that which, in other words, by not being in the U.S., he is in a sense hiding from justice, isn't he?
Yeah.
Whether or not you believe that justice is proper, deserved, and fair.
Right. I guess he feels that in order to be able to tell the world about what he knows,
right,
he can't do it from the United States because, they get him.
Isn't he now, Natan, actually getting into dangerous territory where initially there were allegations, Edward Snowden, there were some who said he's a patriot and some who said this is treasonous. And when you look at the definition of treason, you can say, well, he is not, you could make a kind of indirect argument that he is providing aid and comfort to foreign nations by telling Americans that their own government is surveilling them. But it is not really a direct case. If he is now going into saying, hey, this is stuff that is you're not legally able to talk about this, and it directly relates to what we are doing to other countries, I think he's making the situation way worse for him now.
I think he's playing Russian roulette, and there's one bullet left. So, and it's his turn. So I think if I were him and I wanted to save my own hide, I probably wouldn't disclose, if it's true, information that about what the U.S. is doing illegally to the Chinese government. I think he's in a really bad situation.
Lewis, do you think that he is doing this with no regard for his personal future because he thinks of himself as somewhat of a martyr who says, I need to get out as much information as possible? Or is he just not playing this correctly? I mean, the example of where the U.S. is hacking China, I don't know that that's something that will catalyze people to do very much, but it could get him into a lot more trouble. I don't know that it's worth it.
Yeah, of course, our government could claim that those are false claims.
Sure. As China claims it's false that they are hacking us.
Right.
Yeah.
So he is getting himself deeper. I'm sure he knows that. I think he is in the right spot at the moment.
We will see.
We'll see how much influence the U.S. has on Hong Kong.
Earlier in the week, I told you about a Pew Research Center poll, which said that 56% of Americans were in agreement with the NSA surveillance that was revealed by Edward Snowden, while 41% of respondents said that they were against it. There were some initial shock to some people about those numbers and the high level of support for NSA surveillance as described. We now have more polls which show that there may have been something to questioning those initial numbers. We have a CBS poll which says that 58% of Americans disapprove of the NSA surveillance, 38% approve of it. If you say, what about in cases where the people being surveilled are suspected of terrorist activity, it reverses completely to where 75% approve. When asked if the government's collection of American phone records is necessary to find terrorists, a slight majority, 53%, say that it is. Now, that's interesting because presumably that is the point of it. But if you don't tell people that, they are against it. Another poll, the Gallup poll, can we even really trust Gallup after what happened in the election? Maybe not, but the same could be said about Pew. So I don't know that tells us much. The Gallup poll says 53% of Americans they do not approve of the NSA surveillance and phone records collection. 37% say that they do approve. And then lastly, we have a Reuters Ipsos poll, which says that 31% of Americans would describe Edward Snowden as a patriot, 23% of Americans would describe him as a traitor, and 46% don't know, which really tells us there's not much of a difference between those who like or dislike what he did. Almost half just aren't sure about it yet.
Yeah, and I think everyone still needs to learn more about this, including us. I'm sure there's a lot more to come. So
I mean,
we'll see.
if we have a problem with this being legal, right? If we have a problem with the NSA surveillance of phone records being legal, let's look at other things that are legal and just as egregious and try to figure out why are people reacting much more strongly to this than to other things. And I think it's because this really feels palatable, or it feels tangible in how it affects people on a day-to-day basis. Do you realize what's in the tax code that provides insane benefits to super rich people who can afford to take advantage of these things? Yeah, I kind of do, but it seems far off, and it's not like in my day-to-day life. And, I have my job. I'm not super rich. I don't really know or care. It doesn't affect me. Wait a second. After I finish making my phone calls each month, Verizon sends a list of who I called to the government. That feels very tangible. And I think that the level of interest in this is affected by how tangible it feels.
Yeah, I guess anyone could, take a step back and say, this could be happening to me.
Right.
And there'd be nothing I could do to stop it. I mean, the tax evasion thing is a good one. And at the same time,
tax avoidance.
Tax avoidance.
Fair, yeah.
Look what is happening in like Guantanamo.
Right.
Like, do the vast majority of Americans care that people are being waterboarded there when they know that that's not going to happen to them?
The real question to me is, if we look at any of these polls, if it's 60-40 in favor or 60-40 against surveillance, are those numbers even in the ballpark where if Edward Snowden is trying to catalyze people to make change on this issue, are 60-40 numbers in either direction enough to get people to really push for change? I don't know that they are. We'll see in the next few weeks and months.
And what kind of change are we going to get? I mean, currently...
That's another question.
Right.
But even if there will be activism around this in a significant way. Congressman Peter King, he's a Republican from New York. He wants to punish journalists who published the NSA leak. So, of course, we had Edward Snowden provide documents to Glenn Greenwald. The Guardian, and that mirrored by the Washington Post, published and broke the story. The self-proclaimed First Amendment pioneer and current Republican U.S. Congressman Peter King thinks that journalists should be punished for publishing those leaked documents, not for initially publishing them, but even if they are publishing them in a secondary way, right? In other words, if you obtain the documents from some other news organization and you republish them, that you should be punished. He said at a CNN interview, actually, if they knew this was classified information, I think action should be taken, especially on something of this magnitude. I know the whole issue of leaks has been gone into over the last month. I think something of this magnitude, there's an obligation, both moral and legal, against a reporter disclosing something which would so severely compromise national security. As a practical matter, I guess it happened in the past several years, a number of reporters who have been prosecuted under us. So the answer is yes to your question. There's precedent here. If you go back to 1971 and look at the New York Times Company versus the United States, the Supreme Court has held that newspapers could not be punished for publishing leaks like the Pentagon Papers. At least, if we can say nothing else about this, Peter King is consistent with his outrage and disregard for Supreme Court precedent, in that 3 years ago, in 2010, he thought prosecutors should be going after Julian Assange and the Times for publishing leaked cables that they were not responsible for stealing or procuring in the first place. My only question when I read this is, when will American voters decide it's time to punish Peter King and vote him out of office? Because I'm not usually big on slippery slope arguments, but it's not that far to say, if you should be punished for republishing the documents that you didn't obtain, maybe you should be punished just for discussing the content of those documents. Maybe we should be punished because we said, even though we're not showing the documents, that this is what the documents say. It seems like a very dangerous road to go down.
Let's punish people who voted him in.
Right. Natan, do you agree that this is not the road we should be going down?
Oh, of course. And just on a bright note, there's no chance that the Supreme Court would ever say that Peter King's future potential law that he would never pass, saying that you can do this, they would never say that's constitutional.
Absolutely not. Whites are becoming the minority among the U.S. population under 5 for the first time. We've talked about this shift that is taking place demographically. We've talked about the implications in terms of national elections. And now we are getting some numbers that are really going to scare the T-Publicans, the Pat Buchanans, all those types of people who are worried about being, quote, overrun by minorities. You know about this, Louis.
Oh, yes.
So the new census estimates say that the U.S. population as of July of 2012 were already seeing whites be a minority among babies, okay? And this is, of course, fueled by high rates of immigration birth, particularly among Hispanics. We kind of have a sense of that. Now, based on the current rates of growth and the fact that those babies are now turning into, little kids who are walking around, whites in the under 5 group are expected to become a minority this year or during 2014, according to the Census Bureau's acting director. The government also projects that in 5 years, minorities will make up more than half of children under 18, and then not long after that, the total U.S. white population will continue to decline in absolute numbers based on aging baby boomers. So this is interesting for a number of reasons. The political implications are interesting. The Republican Party, which has depended for a long time on the white vote, can no longer just depend on getting white voters. In 2016, Republicans would need something like 62 or a little over 62% of the white vote in order to win, based on the kind of depending on white voters paradigm. It's almost impossible. That hasn't happened for something like 30 or more years. The other issue is, how is this going to affect the kind of xenophobic crowd like Pat Buchanan? Now, just out of curiosity, I said, has Pat Buchanan said anything over the last couple of weeks about this? And he did. He actually just 2 days ago on the Laura Ingraham radio show said that immigration reform, which would include this kind of path to citizenship, is equivalent to appeasing Hitler. So wasting no time on synthesizing these numbers into fear-mongering and the typical xenophobic attitudes we've seen from him.
And more Hitler references.
Yes.
Very popular.
I'll tell you what would be like appeasing Hitler: letting Pat Buchanan sit in and give his input into a legislative hearing on this bill. That would be appeasing Hitler.
The closest thing, I'm not big on Hitler comparisons and compare and contrast type situations, but it would be way closer to appeasing Hitler to let people with Pat Buchanan's worldview dictate immigration policy.
I agree. I mean, in general, I think the Republican Party is in serious trouble. Yeah. Serious trouble.
On today's bonus show, we will talk about FEMA denying funds to West Texas after the fertilizer plant explosion. We'll talk about a class action lawsuit against the NSA, and super glue saving an infant from a brain aneurysm. How do you get the bonus show? It's very easy. Go to our website, davidpakman.com. You can click on this orange button on the left side, or you can also just go straight to davidpakman.com/membership and sign up. We will take a break. A lot to talk about, including today, Jehovah's Witnesses came to my door before I came to the studio. What happened? All of the details are coming up, Louis. Don't go anywhere.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
The membership program we often talk about is made possible in part by liberalbias.com. As you know, good conservatives know climate change is a total myth. So why are there so many graphs and charts that disagree? Find out about the liberal bias that's inherent in temperature, weather, and other sciencey things at liberalbias.com. Very special new member announcement today, Lewis. The new member of the day is Anthony Petramala. But not only is he the new member of the day, it is also his birthday today. If we have ever had a member of the day on the same day as his birthday. Oh, are you playing Korean techno music because of it?
It's a party.
Yeah. In any case, I don't think we've ever had a member birthday on the same day as a member of the day announcement. But in any case, happy birthday to Anthony Petramala. Not only is he a year older and a year wiser, he is also a David Pakman Show member. He is supporting alternative, independent, non-corporate media. That's really the best birthday present anybody could ask for, isn't it?
Can't think of a better one.
Let's get to a couple of pictures that were sent in from audience members. Brian Sizemore sent in a picture of where he listens to the David Pakman Show podcast. And this is from the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia. And I have to tell you, I don't know if it's just something about the lighting, but the mountain ridge really does look kind of blue. I mean, maybe is that why they call them the Blue Ridge Mountains? I'm not that familiar with them.
Could be. I have no idea.
Looks so that's nice, Brian Sizemore in Virginia. And then also, this is very cool. Got a picture from Roger Keys, who says he is bleeding blue in a red state while listening to the David Pakman Show on his motorcycle. This is Roger Keys listening. He's on the road. Looks like a pretty cool motorcycle. You know, I used to have a Honda CBR 600. For about 6 months, I had a motorcycle. And that's a whole other story, which is more not embarrassing, but I ended up just feeling very unsafe and got rid of it after only 6 months. Mm-hmm. I don't regret it, although it was very fun to ride.
Yeah.
I remember I had a friend that had a pretty beastly motorcycle, and I told him, hey, what happens if you're on the highway and the tire bursts?
Right.
And he was like, I've never thought of that. And then I never saw him with the bike again. Like, he sold it within 6 weeks.
Right. In any case, Roger Keys being safe, listening to the David Pakman Show while riding around on his motorcycle, bleeding blue in a red state. Very cool. Which gets us to our update on the Indiegogo campaign fundraiser. DavidPakman.com. Bright blue banner at the top of the page. It says Indiegogo. Check it out. Watch the video. Read about what we're doing. This is amazing, Lewis. We have surpassed the $5,000 fundraising mark without a single contribution over $250. I mean, we have over 100 contributors at this point, and I almost feel like Ron Paul, who used to go out there and say, hey, we're doing it with $5 and $10 contributions because that's not more government. You remember when he used to do that?
Of course.
We're doing it with
some success, I might
no
add.
Contributions over $250. And if you've been one of these people who is saying, I would contribute, but I'm not going to do it yet, I'll tell you what. If we had everyone who said, I would contribute, but I'm just going to wait for X, Y, or Z to happen first, if all of those people went to the website today and contributed, this entire fundraiser would be over. So if you've had an inkling that, I might throw $5 or $10 at this thing, this is the time to do it, Lewis.
Agreed.
DavidPakman.com, bright blue banner at the top of the website. I was getting ready for the show today, getting ready to come to the studio, and I hear a knock on my door. I go downstairs. It's kind of been rainy here. It wasn't pouring earlier today, but it was kind of rainy, and I open the door, and there are two very formally dressed women, probably about 45, 50 years old, and they say, hi, how are you today? And I say, I'm doing well, thank you. And they say, we're here with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I don't know if you've heard, but we've been going around talking to everybody. I said, no, I haven't heard that you've been going around talking to everybody. Nobody's told me about that. He said, we wanted to talk to you, actually, about what we're doing. And I said, I appreciate that, but I'm actually not interested in that today. And they said, that's okay. I want to leave you with some literature. And I said, I think it's better if you just keep the literature and maybe there's someone else who would be more interested in it. I don't really need it. At which point they said, we don't want to waste your time. We understand, but I really think that if you take a look at what we're presenting here, that you would like it. And then on your own time, you read it, and then you can give us a call. I'll give you my personal card, and you can call me if you have any questions. And I said, I appreciate your persistence, but I am going to have to pass on the literature for the Jehovah's Witnesses thing. And they said, okay, well, we appreciate you being so polite. And I thanked them, and on they went to the next door.
Quite an encounter.
Did I handle it properly? I posted to Facebook
It's
about
a good
this.
thing you didn't shoot anybody.
I posted, right. I could have decided that I need to stand my ground as a sovereign citizen, but I
Right.
didn't do that.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I posted to Facebook that this happened, and a lot of people said that they are very rude to Jehovah's Witnesses. They say, I'll be willing to talk to you if you're willing to bet me your soul that you can convince me to become a Jehovah's Witness, stuff like that. I understand. And some people said to me, listen, you were polite and that's fine, but they were really, they were pushing their religion on you. You didn't ask for that. You didn't express any interest. I guess that resonates with me kind of, but it's still hard for me to just be rude to people who, in their minds, they're not doing anything wrong. I want absolutely nothing to do with it. The one thing that did cross my mind is I thought about saying, I'm actually glad you're here because I was just reading an article about sexual abuse cover-ups within Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm wondering what is going on with that. I would love to hear from you, but I didn't do that. That slipped my mind.
Yeah, that would have been gold. But you wouldn't have had it on camera, so it would, you could have told us you did that.
My main issue with this whole thing is like the fact that these people call their reading materials literature, and it's not specific to Jehovah's Witnesses. Like all groups are like, oh, let me leave my literature. It's like, for me, literature is like fiction or like important writing. I just hate it when they call it literature.
So you actually had kind of, you have like a linguistic and English
It's a
language
semantic issue that I have more than like a physical one with them being at your door.
Why do Jehovah's Witnesses have inverted nipples?
I have no idea.
Natan, put the camera on me. You good?
Yeah, it's on you.
Get off my porch.
Oh, I see. Very funny. That's clever, Louis. Did you come up with that on your own?
No, someone told me that a long time ago.
So anyway, I am, unless they are not polite to me or try to push their way into my house, I am polite. That is my strategy.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Huckabee. I actually agree with Mike Huckabee with the what am I trying to say here? Do I really agree with Mike Huckabee?
That was Dave's Elmer, Mr. Magoo impression, or
I'm getting all confused because it's making me nervous that I agree with Mike Huckabee.
or is it Elmer Fudd?
Mike Huckabee says churches should give up tax-exempt status. I agree with that, although I don't agree with his reasoning for why they should do it. Is that clear, Louis?
No, it was a Porky Pig. That was your Porky Pig impression.
Right. Some people
yeah.
are surprised that Christian conservative and Republican leader Mike Huckabee is encouraging churches to give up tax-exempt status, something I've said, hey, they should absolutely be doing it. Louis is really having a fit over there.
I'm good.
Is this like just a funny picture? It is weird. It's like fish-eyed in a way.
It's very strange.
Yeah. In any case, he says they should do it because they don't want to be hindered by government when they're putting out a message of God.
It's kind of the opposite reason as us.
What's that?
It's kind of an inverted reason.
it's
they
just
want to have even more influence, so
Right.
they don't want to have the strings attached.
They feel that having to like subscribe to being to these rules of being a tax exempt group will limit their ability to influence people with God's message. Whereas I think because they are really not a nonprofit in the traditional sense, and they are advocating for something that they say is God's message, and I say is advocating for political issues and candidates, that they don't even deserve the nonprofit status. Although, if he's going to agree with me that they should lose the nonprofit status, I guess I'm on board.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's just a good business decision veiled as, pious bull. So, we both agree, but for completely different reasons.
Yeah, no question about it. And I hope it happens. Maybe we can now point to Mike Huckabee and say, listen, even Mike Huckabee says that American churches should not have tax-exempt status. And I would say, well, whatever the reason he thinks that is the case, I'm on board with that. And I support Mike Huckabee.
God bless.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
A animal control officer shot a litter of kittens in front of screaming kids. Is this the type of thing animal control officers should be doing?
Some.
You think this is what they should be doing?
No. I mean, if there's like rabid animals in front of kids that are going crazy, you got to do what you got to do. This is out of control.
So Teresa Landon, who is the Ohio SPCA executive director, told the Sun News that a homeowner called the police for help because of this litter of kittens that showed up in front of some children, right? And the kittens were clearly, they didn't know what was going on. They say, hey, well, let's call animal control. It makes perfect sense. So this is all according to the Ohio SPCA executive director. The officer showed up, and the person who called assumed that the officer would be like trapping the kittens and taking them to a shelter. And if they need to be humanely euthanized because they're not adopted, it would be done in a proper way. It's not just going to be a firing squad, essentially. Instead, the officer is accused of going to his truck, getting a gun, which the homeowner assumed was just a tranquilizer gun, and walking to the back of the house and just starting to shoot and kill each 8 to 10-week-old kitten. Kids were upstairs in the window. They start screaming and crying because they're looking down at what the police officer is doing. And that's what happened. Now, the police department is not denying it. They're saying that is what happened, and this was the proper thing. North Ridgeville Police Department Chief Mike Freeman put out a statement defending the police officer, Officer Accorti, who the Ohio SPCA has demanded be fired and charged with animal abuse. And the statement from the police is, the cats were located within a wood pile and euthanized. The cats were removed from the wood pile and taken from the residence. He said that Accorti's actions were appropriate and that no disciplinary measures for the incident are going to be imposed. He did nothing wrong. He shot kittens with a gun rather than taking them to a shelter, and he did nothing wrong.
And he did it right in front of everyone.
And he did it right in front of children. He shot kittens in front of children, and
it sounds like he didn't even give anyone any warning that he is letting his firearm off right there.
I mean, the kittens really didn't do anything wrong, right? I mean, they weren't violent cats. They didn't ask to be born. They weren't carrying Skittles. They didn't have iced tea. They weren't wearing hoodies. Certainly nothing that would warrant just being shot. I mean, I don't even like cats, and I would be horrified.
I mean, I can only assume that this is a person who gets off on killing animals. There are people like that, and if you are one of those people, this is a job that you would try to get.
If the average individual shot 10 kittens in their backyard, wouldn't he be facing a number of animal cruelty charges? Unless you could really say, hey, listen, these kittens were all suffering. They were all about to die because a piano fell on them.
It would be illegal. Yeah.
It would be illegal, but yet the cop did nothing wrong. Something about the story stinks to high heaven.
There is no reality in which this situation is okay.
No.
No.
Facebook.com/David Pakman Show. We will take a break. We will come back and talk to Dennis Campbell because it is Thursday. And we still have more stories. We still have your voicemails coming up. Glad you're with us. Facebook.com/David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to The David Pakman Show.
Dennis Campbell's with us today. He's editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine, also hosts Worldview Show on YouTube, youtube.com/Worldview Show. Dennis, we've talked on this program in the past about the bee problem and the problems that are starting to be seen with bee population, and then making guesses about what impact that could have more broadly on humans and on the planet. And we now know that the British Beekeepers Association says that a third of all honeybee colonies in England did not survive the winter as we now are moving into summer. Tell us a little bit about the facts, I guess, and then we'll go into the potential effects.
Well, we had a very wet and a very cold winter, unseasonably so, and extended for a very long period of time. And because the fall was also quite wet, the weather that you're currently experiencing right now in the Northeast was normal for us. We'd get a month's worth of rain in 24 hours, and that happened several times during the months of September and October. What that did was it affected the ability of these bees to go and forage for food. So they basically suffered something called hive isolation, where they starved to death in the hive. Plus, the cold weather did not help them as well. So the inability to get the food as well as the isolation. And we've seen updated counts that show as much as 48% of all bees in Wales perished, and as high as 55% in parts of Scotland. So it was weather devastation coupled with the continued use of these pesticides that are used to coat seeds that are then planted into the ground. Monsanto, Bayer, several other major conglomerates use these for genetically modified corn, which is used primarily for fuel, for ethanol. The problem is of course, it spreads to other fields, and it causes a problem because it's causing a bee die-off.
Right.
We've
Now,
also
we actually saw just recently EU member states actually voted to suspend 3 specific pesticides, which it's thought that they cause serious harm to bees. But again, that was literally just weeks, and that's not going to make a difference to what we've been seeing for years now.
Not immediately, but it could eventually help. What they've done is they've passed an EU directive which goes into effect on the 1st of December. And what will happen as a result of that is that those 3 pesticides will be completely banned. The problem is it does not help us for this current summer period, which is of great concern. And the directive was worded in such a way that the existing stocks and supplies can be exhausted right up until November. So basically, member states have until the 1st of September to, in the EU, to come up with their plan for how they're going to deal with it. And they can exhaust existing supplies until the 1st of November. Then from then on, these are completely banned the 1st of December on from use anywhere. But by then, most of the damage, as we said, is done.
So for people who say, okay, so bees are dying, I hear about bees dying, but what does it really matter? Talk a little bit about why this is so important, and it extends beyond just we care about the number of bees.
Well, bees play such a vital role right now. I'm looking out the window of the office here, and we've had some rain, and they're literally pollinating all of the flowers as well as the various parts of the fields. I mean, right now everything is in bloom here in this country, and without the pollinization, taking the pollen away, using it to make the honey, the plants themselves basically suffocate, strangle, and die. And you can see a difference in fields where there are no bees. We're very fortunate. There are about a dozen hives just down the road from where we live. And one of the more spectacular sights in the course of a summer is a swarm in which the hive actually splits off, and the queen, a new queen, takes over, and she takes half the hive with her. And it literally looks as though it's a hailstorm of bees for quite some time. And they can only travel in very short distances, and they usually end up settling on top of a chimney or on a bush. And I did have some photos at one point on my Facebook page of one actual swarm just huddled around a tree. And this beekeeper just came along and tapped it twice, and down it fell into a hive. And he was then able to take that off to his property. So they're a very important part of the ecosystem if you live in an agrarian area.
Yes, the peaceful transfer of power among bee monarchs, always something interesting to see. And hopefully people will become more and more aware of how important this is. I know we've been talking about it for years. Let's talk about...
It's even worse in Germany, David. Almost 500 million, that's 500 million, have died. So it's a serious issue.
Let's talk a little bit about the new Dennis Campbell project, which is BookView. Tell us about that.
Well, as an author, I love to read. You love to read, I know, because I know you're constantly recommending books in your program, and you're having people come on and talk about their books. What I really wanted to do was, because we're limited by time in this format, I wanted to have an opportunity to really talk to authors, to understand the writing process, the creative process, the thought process that went into the creation of their books. And so I've created BookView TV, which every week will feature an author, or perhaps 2 or 3, depending on the topic. Like this week's we've got the sugar, salt, fat, Michael Moss, and we have a nutritionist, so we're talking about food. Before that, we had a novelist, a young man from Manchester, England, the most unlikely of novelists, considering his background. He's written a fabulous book called Passion, and before that, we had Hitchhiking with Larry David and Paul Samuel Dolman. And I do the show in 3 8 to 10 minute segments, so it'd be like as if you were watching a half-hour program. Each of the segment gets loaded up, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, one on Thursday. And it's really just an in-depth discussion about what it was, how they created their book. Next week, we're going to be talking to Heather Poole. She's a very interesting lady. I met her on Twitter years ago when she first started, and she's written a book called Cruising Attitude. I'm reading from this: Tales of Crash Pads, Crew Dramas, and Crazy Passengers at 35,000 feet. So I really enjoy this. It's more energizing and exciting for me to just have the opportunity to share kind of a memoir, a living memoir of the craft of writing with these people.
So go to youtube.com/bookviewtv, subscribe to that. It's only a few videos a week and you'll see what's going on there. It's not going to overload your inbox if you're also subscribed to Worldview TV, and you'll get to check out some very cool interviews. We've been speaking with...
And we're going to Pakistan tonight on Worldview Show, where they've just had a new government. We're going to have 2 segments with a journalist in Islamabad talking about the new government there. So,
excellent stuff. Dennis Campbell, we will talk to you next week.
Thanks. Looking forward to it.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome back to the show. Welcome to everybody who's watching us live on YouTube from the I Love It When I Wake Up in the Morning and Barack Obama is President Facebook page, as well as the Too Informed to Vote Republican page. Interesting story I read about babies in Finland. Now, we've talked a little bit about education in Finland, and I know actually on the Young Turks they've talked quite a bit about education in Finland. And this is more about child rearing in Finland, which is that Finnish babies sleep in cardboard boxes and infant mortality is really, really low. And it sounds weird when you just hear about it that way, but for 75 years, Finland has had this kit that comes in a cardboard box, and it includes clothing, it includes a bunch of different baby supplies, and the box itself that it comes in can serve as like, kind of like a crib. You put sheets in it, and it's kind of the initial crib for the baby. And over time, Finland has reduced their infant mortality rate to one of the lowest in the world. And this dates back to the 1930s. And the idea is that no matter what your background is, no matter what your financial situation is, that every baby in Finland gets kind of like an equal start. Now, of course, if you have a lot of money, you will have a lot more stuff than what is in this box, but at least it sets some minimum starting point for everybody. And when you look at this, the bottom of the box itself is kind of like a mattress. When you think about this box bed situation, mothers have a choice of taking this package or of taking cash. And that's right now it's about 140 euros. 95% of the women opt for the box because it is worth quite a bit more. And it's almost become kind of like there's some kind of sentimental value attached to that this is done in Finland. And back in the 30s, Finland was a pretty poor country. The infant mortality rate was actually really high. About 65 out of 1,000 babies died. And once they started this program, infant mortality rates started to decrease to the point where now they have one of the lowest infant mortality rates. And the other aspect of this is that a boy can pass on the clothes to a girl and vice versa. The colors are deliberately gender neutral. They could be for any baby. And it really just says a lot about how parents are treated. And it's really kind of a collective solution to lower infant mortality, right? This isn't about, some people in the U.S., conservatives might say, look at those takers taking free stuff from the government. This really isn't about being takers. They understand in Finland that lower infant mortality rates benefit everybody, right? This is really teamwork. And then you'll hear allegations from the American right of it's socialist, it's communist. You can still have your own business in Finland. It's not a socialist nation, but like many Scandinavian countries, they understand that it's okay to pay higher taxes if you really get a lot of social good from those taxes. And that could include healthcare. It could include an even starting point for all babies such that infant mortality rates are drastically reduced. This is a really good thing. I think this is an example of how you can have a balance between. You can still have a business, right? It's not communism. You're not assigned a job and all of these kind of caricatures that we hear in the American right, and you actually do really good things.
Yeah, it doesn't take a genius to realize that when you look at it, many of these Scandinavian countries especially, but Europe in general, there's less inequality. People are happier. People are healthier. And I mean, it's because of little things like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Read an interesting article about Google Glass, the Google glasses that have the built-in camera, and we've been talking about
The
it.
stupid glasses.
The glasses Lewis doesn't like. And Mark Andreessen, who's the co-founder of Andreessen Horowitz, he says that he has a sample pair of the glasses. He says that people are going to get so used to these glasses when they go mainstream that people aren't going to want to take them off because they will feel like they are cut off from society. They will feel naked. They will feel like, wait a second, I don't have internet right here over my eyes at all times. I need to have internet in my field of vision all the time. And he thinks people are going to be so in love with these that they're never going to take them off. Now, I have some thoughts on this.
So hold on. Let me contextualize this for people.
Sure.
This is what happens when you lose your smartphone.
Right, exactly.
When
Well, that's
you
what I'm
lose
getting.
that feeling, when you lose your smartphone, what happens when you take the glasses off?
Imagine it tenfold because you have it right here over your field of vision.
Yeah.
Now, some people will say, "Hey, this is a good thing. We're getting more connectivity. It's just gonna be great. Technology's advancing. All of that type of thing." The other issue is if you think of how distracted people get now when you're talking to them and they look down at a text. Imagine what it's going to be like if they can be looking at you, but then you see that their eyes are kind of moving slightly, and you realize they're actually like watching videos on YouTube, maybe of the David Pakman Show, while you're trying to talk to them. What kind of problems will come from this? I mean, I think.
Oh, are you kidding me? There are going to be car crashes all over the place. There are going to be people walking in front of traffic. It's going to be chaos.
I read a book. It's called. I think it's called Rainbow's End by Werner Vinge, where people have the kind of contact lens technology that is similar. Instead of a pair of glasses, it's contact lenses where you can see your email, all that type of stuff. And part of the social dynamics of that is that you can tell when people are not really paying attention because they start kind of looking off to the side, and you can tell they're manipulating icons with their eyes type of thing. I don't know. You're convinced that Google Glass will not go mainstream.
It's well known that just because something is in your field of view doesn't mean you're actually focused on it and that you can react to it.
So you're concerned?
Yes. What you're focusing on is really what you're seeing.
Right.
It's more of a cognitive thing than a vision thing. And these glasses are going to be a disaster. These glasses are going to get a lot of people killed.
All right, you've heard it from Lewis. That's his thought on Google Glass. Let's go to some of your voicemails. Our voicemail number is 219. Natan, were you going to say something?
No.
No, okay.
Well, I was going to say something, but I don't know why you thought I was going to say something.
I thought I heard you try to interject.
All I was going to say is that I don't want to look out of my eyes and see what the Terminator sees in the Terminator. I just want to avoid that.
Our voicemail number, 219-2-David P. Here's a voicemail about our cilantro bonus show story yesterday, that some people just have a genetic predisposition to dislike cilantro.
Yo, David P., Patty D. from Minneapolis. Just watched the Pat Robertson thing, and at the end I heard you're going to be talking about cilantro and all that stuff tomorrow, and I have a huge despisement or hatred towards cilantro. It tastes like soap. I don't get it.
Yeah, I got a bunch of messages about this. I was surprised. I've never thought that cilantro was so polarizing. I mean, you'd think it was abortion or gay marriage, the way people were reacting to it.
It's right up there.
It is. The cilantro debate is a big thing. I would actually like to see Marco Rubio, in the context of the DREAM Act, take a position on cilantro. I think that would be huge.
Well, considering his background, I'm sure we know how he would lean.
I don't even know what that means, to be honest.
Come on. There's a lot of cilantro in a lot of...
Cuban cooking?
Yeah. They use cilantro a lot, don't they?
I don't know.
It's genetic, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it is genetic.
I mean, but who knows? Maybe it's also hereditary.
Yeah.
Anyway, we don't have time for voicemails.
We don't have time for any more.
No.
That's the only one.
We got 30 seconds, yeah.
All right. Well, okay. Well, I was going to play a voicemail about Edward Snowden and jail time, but we're not going to do it. Instead, I will tell you that we will get to that voicemail on Monday. I will also tell you the best thing you could do over the weekend is make a contribution to our Indiegogo campaign, davidpakman.com. Click on the bright blue banner at the top of the page. And also, why not just knock them both out over the weekend? Become a David Pakman Show member, davidpakman.com/membership. Say no to corporate media. Vote with your dollars. We all know it's the right thing to do. We'll see you Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.